Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
5 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Nice looking Thursday morning. Hope you're doing well. Years ago, Robin, I worked at the Marion County Juvenile Detention Center. Mm-hmm. And the philosophy on how to handle underage law violators at that time, I think it's still the same, was not to punish, but instead to rehabilitate. If you broke the law after you were 18, then we punish you. If you broke the law before you were 18, we rehabilitate you. That was the basic philosophy behind this. And so back then, I can remember when a kid who I was working with went to court. The detention center served as a jail, a holding place, until they had been adjudicated either guilty or not guilty, right? And once they were found guilty, then they were sentenced. Okay, and in the adult world, you get sentenced to probation or prison, and that's about it, right? Mm-hmm. In the juvenile world, you were sentenced to anything. It could be a very strong facility similar to a prison, might as well have been a prison, or it could have been a camp. There was a camp out in the Ocala National Forest called ECAL-E2, and it had a wonderful success rate. And I remember when I first found out about it, I said, "You're kidding me. He broke the law, he's guilty, and he gets to go to camp. He goes canoeing. He lives in a tent. He has fun making fires. Are you kidding me? This is going to rehabilitate?" Well, my skepticism was wrong, because this camp really did help these kids. It was an amazing thing that somebody realized. Now, they've since closed, but if you talk to the young people who were kids back then who went through this, they are well, first of all, a judge wouldn't put them in that camp unless they were, I mean, they wouldn't be hardened criminals at 17 and go there. They had to have been, something less than hardened, if I'm just to illustrate it. Okay, so we're not talking about criminals right now, but we are talking about therapies that work that you might not think would work. And a great example that is more directly in line with what we want to talk about is the Marion Therapeutic Riding Association. Now, they don't work with delinquent youth, but they work with special people. We have a 55, how old is Doug? 55? Yeah, 55-year-old friend. He has Down syndrome, and he goes to the Therapeutic Riding Association, and he is awesome at riding these little horse carriages.
Yeah, he drives the carriage.
And we've heard so many success stories from the riding therapy. The veterans who've had PTSD have gone to have therapeutic riding, and it makes a big difference for them. Just like Camp ECAL-E2, you say, what? How's that going to help? I don't know, but it does help. We have a really touching story we want to share with you. It is in a book called The Long Ride Home, and our guest probably thought that was the longest intro he was ever sitting through. Rupert Isaacson is our guest. He's the author of this very touching, very eye-opening book. Rupert is a human rights activist for the Kalahari Bushmen. He's the founder of the Horse Boy Foundation, specializing in helping children learn and communicate through horses, play equipment, and their environment. And he happens to be a very talented writer. Rupert, you have expressed your thoughts in this book so well. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Thanks for having me on. It's an honor.
It was a long intro, I know, but I wanted to make that comparison between things that we don't expect will work, and then they end up working.
Absolutely. I think what we've all seen is that whether it's in what you were talking about before with the rehab of delinquents or at-risk youth, or just general education in general, if the old ways were working so incredibly well, we wouldn't have to keep throwing mud at the wall.
That's a really good point.
But clearly, every generation comes up with innovations, and that's the process of being human.
So, were you ever at a point where you questioned this? Like, how did you have that moment?
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. It was my son is autistic, and he was diagnosed in 2004, and it wasn't my intention to put him on a horse, even though I'm a horse trainer. In fact, where I'm sitting right now, in this interview, watching two of my horses being trained in a covered arena right now. Yeah, I've been a professional horse trainer since in my teens, but because my background was with sport horses, which are, you know, fairly high maintenance, I thought that my son, with his, you know, tantrums and, you know, impossible to control behavior, would not be safe around horses. He took me to my neighbor's mare, and he made his own connection with her, and luckily I had the skills so I could follow it. And what happened was, the first time I had him up there in the saddle with me, he began to speak, and his speech therapist had given up on him at this point.
No way.
And then I thought, oh my gosh, yeah. So it wasn't my idea at all. But then when I saw it was working, I was like, okay, I have to follow this.
Wow. And so you knew right away and I mean, is there a science that you can help us understand, or is it just...
There is. It turns out, obviously at the time I didn't know any science behind it. I just saw this thing was working. His speech therapist had given up on him that week. So I was like, no problem, I think I have the solution. She has 4 legs and a tail. So we just started literally living in the saddle together. And I mean sort of 2 to 4 hours a day, really. And not only his language came that way, but also his literacy and his numeracy. So when I realized, okay, well, he's speaking and he's, you know, following the choices I'm giving him, etc., etc., I began to paint letters on trees. And he loved The Lion King, so we were singing all the Lion King songs as we rode, and I'd do, you know,
I know that song. Yeah.
Totally. And I'd write an S on a tree, an I on a tree, around the corner, an M, a B, then an A, and there'd be a little Simba toy with it. And he learned to read. He flat out learned to read. And then with numbers, we would count the footfalls of the horse as we rode, and then I would start having my friends on the ground, and we'd put 4 together, and we'd take one of them away because he had a beard. He was the odd one out, and, you know, I'd do that in an evil Godzilla voice with farts to make it funny. And then he'd start crying because he was by himself, so we'd put him back with the horse, and, you know, and pretty soon we'd do addition, subtraction, then I'd ride at them, and we'd divide 4 by 2, and round them up 2 times 2, and he got his basic literacy, his basic numeracy. And I realized I had this thing. I didn't realize what the science behind it was until later, because what happened was I did this first journey, which the book talks about, across Mongolia with my son.
How far of a ride is that?
It was quite... about a month, let's say.
A month, okay.
Yeah, I had to quantify the distance. And I went out with a child that was autistic, but I came back with a child that was autistic, obviously. But his 3 key dysfunctions, his incontinence, his tantruming, and his inability to make friends, these things he left behind him in Mongolia. And when I got back, it's all told in the book, when I got back, I got curious, and I thought, is it just my son, or is it other kids? So I opened a small center, you know, and I just started offering for free sort of play dates with horses for local families with kids on the autism spectrum, and there's no shortage. It's about 1 child in 68 over the age of 8 now. It's like a pandemic. It's gone beyond epidemic. So we found that there was this universal response, and that's when I started talking to scientists, and I said, what's going on? And my ex, who I'm still very close to, Rowan's mother, is a professor of educational developmental psychology at the University of Texas. So we had access to neurologists and so on. And they all came and looked at what we were doing, and they all said, the particular rhythms that you're working with this horse, because we're working very what we call collective rhythms. They said, look at how it's rocking the child's hips. What you're doing is you're filling him with oxytocin, the feel-good communication, and it's making him communicate, and it's calming down his overactive nervous system, which is often a feature of autism, and his overactive amygdala, which is the part of the brain that governs fight, flight, and freeze. And people on the autism spectrum notoriously have amygdalas that are overactive, so they have more anxiety than you or I do. He said, they said, what you're doing is you're filling him with basically the antidote for this. And then you're giving deep pressure, which they love. You're a voice in the ear. You're not this challenging frontal gaze they have to defend themselves from. It's kinetic learning. You're going out and experiencing, and that's why he's learning. And we realized, oh my gosh, well, this we could systemize, and so we did, and we've now trained about 1,000 people in 13 countries how to do it.
So did you buy that right away? Not to be cynical, but if I heard that, I would say, okay, that might be part of it, but there's got to be a part of it that is maybe more hallmark card-like it's love. I mean, you love a horse.
Oh yeah. No, totally. But that's what oxytocin is. You see, the oxytocin, the hormone of happiness and communication, is love. When it's part of what, if you want to really break it down into science, it's what's called the mammalian caregiving system, and it's hardwired into us. So people forget that mammals actually did overlap with the dinosaurs. So it's been around for an awful long time. So we have two main instinctive parts of our brain. We have the reptilian brain, which is the amygdala that I was just talking about: fight, flight, freeze, just survive. Either run away, fight, or protect your organs. And you go into this crouch when somebody gives you a fright. You engage that psoas muscle through your hips, and you just go into that. But that doesn't get you very far. That gets you to survive. But in order to thrive, and if you think about how successful mammals have been, particularly us, we have this thing called the mammalian caregiving system that's predicated on oxytocin. Oxytocin doesn't just make us love each other and communicate and look after each other, but it also brings down breast milk. It makes birth contractions happen. It's fundamental to who we are.
Wow. That is really fascinating.
Can this help with people that have dementia?
Absolutely. There is something else that happens actually with these types of rocking and balancing movements. It also makes one's brain produce a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So what it does is it basically acts as a miracle grow for the brain. And all mammals have it, all great apes have it more than other mammals, and we of the great apes have it more than the other great apes. And you get it by moving and problem solving, usually in rocking and balancing motions. And if you think about it, it's who we are, because we're hunting and gathering apes, right? So if you park old people in a chair, and even a round of golf and a crossword puzzle isn't going to cut it. What they're supposed to do is run around after the grandkids, lifting them up, and then problem solving. How do I teach them this? How do I teach them that?
Yeah. So
those two things are related to dementia. Yeah, if people are not doing this, it can have a bad effect.
I know that we have a lot of listeners who are very interested in this subject. We've got a wonderful program here in Ocala called the Marion Therapeutic Writing. I think there are 2 programs like this, right?
Yes, there are.
I just can't remember the name of the other one, but they are doing what you're talking about, Rupert. We'll take a little break, and we'll be right back. The book is called The Long Ride Home. Rupert Isaacson. Where are you, Rupert? Where are you calling from?
I'm in Austin, Texas. Currently cold and rainy.
I thought I detected a Texas accent. Hold on.
It's a giveaway, isn't it?
Hold on, Rupert. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. There's a high risk of rip currents at the beaches for the rest of the week. Sunshine mixing with clouds Thursday, breezy and warm, high 80 at the coast, 86 inland. Partly cloudy Thursday night, low 59 inland, 65 along the coast. For Friday, a mix of clouds and sun, high 79 at the coast, 85 inland. Saturday, partly sunny, maybe a shower, high 78 to 82. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Hi, I'm Seth with AA Lock, Dock, and Security. Have you ever thought about the locks or security on your house or business? Have you ever wondered why the keys to your new car cost so much? Well, at AA Lock, Dock, and Security, we can help with securing your valuables. We can even replace those expensive transponder keys. We can give you the knowledge that no one else will. Call AA Lock, Dock, and Security at 867-1965. That's 867-1965.
That was the sound of a tree falling. It could be your tree. You're going to have it trimmed, but never got around to calling Pride Tree Service. It could have fallen in a field, and now all you have to do is call Pride Tree Service, and they'll have it quickly out of the way for a great price. But don't wait until the tree falls. It may not fall in the field. It may hit your car, your house, or worse. So call Pride Tree Service today and avoid all those headaches before they happen. Pride Tree Service, 840-0750. That's 840-0750.
All right, 20 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for listening. Let's return now to Rupert Isaacson. He is the author of The Long Ride Home, The Extraordinary Journey of Healing That Changed a Child's Life, and the child would be his own child, Rowan. How old is Rowan right now, Rupert?
He's now 14.
14, wow. And had you not discovered this, Rupert, Rowan would be a different person now, wouldn't he?
He really would, because the therapies that we were trying just really weren't working. Now he has a job. He has his own web-based television show about animals. Yeah, it's extraordinary, called Endangerous Safaris. If you type that into Google, like dangerous with an EN on the front, Endangerous Safaris, see what comes up. It's extraordinary. He goes around the world tracking endangered and dangerous animals and creating these amazing vignettes on YouTube, all about toilet humor and science.
I love that.
Dangerous Safaris.
He's really found his voice. Yeah, Endangerous Safaris.
.com. Okay, I'm going to it right now.
Yeah.
Oh, is that him? Wow, he's a good-looking kid. That's him?
Yeah, he's handsome.
Yeah, sure is. Wow. Is he fighting off the girls?
Wow.
Yeah.
He's fighting off the girls. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, Robert. Here.
No, I can.
He's under siege.
I don't know what happened. All of a sudden it became a rhinoceros. It was a picture of your son. Now it's a rhinoceros. I don't know what happened there. All right. So, oh gosh, I had a question for you, or just I had a thought. It's not really a question. My thought was that when you first were told it's the rocking motion, somebody easily could have said, okay, I'm going to make an artificial horse and make $1 million by selling artificial horses for autistic children. But that wouldn't have worked because you need the actual horse, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would get some effect, but there's a couple of problems with it. One, it would be really boring.
Yeah.
The other is you don't have the magic of the living animal and the relationship with the living animal. And then the third thing is, of course, if you think about what autism means, auto is the Greek word for the self. Automobile means a self-propelled machine. You don't need a horse to pull it. That's why they called it automobile in the early 20th century. So autism is selfism locked within the self, and the difficulty is the relationship with the exterior world. What does the horse do, of course, but carry you into the exterior world, effortlessly, delightfully, filling your body full of this incredible feel-good hormone. That's missing in a simulator. So you kind of do need the real deal.
All right, I want to be
God intended, sort of thing.
I think I'm going to ask one of those questions that you probably don't like, because you know when you make a blanket statement, it's probably not true. But just like, and we've learned this from other interviews we've had with autistic specialists, and they will say that all autistic children are not savants. And because
no, for sure,
because of the movies, we think that. But so I have a question kind of along those lines. It seems like a lot of the autistic children we have known have an affinity for animals, and the animals seem to have
a lot of them do.
So, but that's not a blanket statement, right? It's
not a blanket statement. I mean, but it's pretty universal. You'll definitely get some parents who say, "Oh, my kid doesn't care for animals," but it's a minority that a lot of them do have a very clear, direct line to them. Yeah.
So now, how well is your son around people? Is he outgoing? Is he ready?
Totally.
Does he have friends and things like that?
Yeah, all of the above. And I mean, he's quirky for sure, but his autism, it's not like you're trying to cure autism, because autism is a perfectly viable, valid way of going through life. I mean, I know now many adult autists who've gone on to careers, love lives, etc. Look at people like Dr. Temple Grandin, who a lot of listeners will know.
Oh, yes.
And we work very closely with. So quirky is fine. But yes, he will totally come and engage with you, and he has a job at a local road construction company that he's as a site safety inspector. They love him, he loves them. I know, it's extraordinary. And he's also quirky as all get out. It's all of the above, all at the same time.
That's amazing.
But I'm pretty quirky too. So. Being quirky.
Did you see this story? There was a story in the news this morning, Rupert. Google this one and see if I would love to hear what you have to say about this. A father realized he was autistic after his son was diagnosed as autistic.
Yeah, that's actually not uncommon at all, because the autism spectrum is so wide. It can go from sitting in a corner, rocking backwards and forwards, completely shut down, to the amazing math professor you had at college who forgot to put deodorant on and didn't have very good social skills but could open the university.
Right, yeah.
That it can go right across the board that way, and it manifests differently in different people. And it frequently, particularly on the Asperger's end of it, which is the sort of mad professor type end of it, that often is quite genetic.
Was this made into a movie?
The Horseboy, yes. The Horseboy, which is my first book, there was a documentary which was on PBS, and you can still download it off Amazon Prime, called The Horse Boy, which follows the journey across Mongolia. The current book, The Long Ride Home, for the moment is just a book, but a feature movie is being made of The Horse Boy, and it probably won't be out till 2018 or 19, but it's in the works.
Wow, that's exciting stuff. We had a story here in Florida of an autistic boy who was at the beach with his father, was swimming, and one of the quirky things about his autism was that he didn't know what fear was. He feared nothing, so he went out too deep into the water. The father went out to get him. The two of them ended up getting brought into the water. Long story short, they spent the whole night in the water, treading water without any flotation device. Mm-hmm. And the next morning, the father was wearing, and in the night, by the way, they split up. The current or whatever caused them to go separate ways, and the father thought, well, the son is gone. He must have died, And so a fisherman sees the man's cross. He was wearing a cross. Mm-hmm. And it reflects in the sun. So the fisherman says, what is that over there? So he goes over, sees a man in the water. This is off of New Smyrna, I think, beach. New Smyrna Beach. And then like an hour or so later, the Coast Guard finds the boy. It was unbelievable. It was just a beautiful, unbelievable story. And so in other words, they both survived the night.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Does spirituality play a huge role in your life and your son's life?
It does. It does. I'm a great believer in the power of prayer and the power of love, and I think anyone who isn't just is not walking around with their eyes open. But in my previous sort of life, I've been a journalist and a human rights activist in Africa for a long time. And the reason is my family's actually African. I speak, as you can tell, with this Texan accent. My family, my mother is from South Africa. My dad is from Zimbabwe. And I've been involved in Africa since I was a boy. And I probably saw my first shamanic ceremony for healing on my grandfather's farm in Zimbabwe when I was 7 years old. It used to go on all the time, and you thought nothing of it as a kid. You just thought, well, these people get sick, they get better, and a lot of them didn't have access to Western medicine at the time. When I started working with the hunting and gathering tribes in the deep Kalahari Desert, again, I became very familiar with their systems of traditional medicine, and some of it is actual plants. They will use this plant for this plant for that, and they're very successful to the extent that I helped one group take Pfizer to court after Pfizer tried to slap a patent on one of the plants. So I mean, their pharmacology is very good, but they also have this spiritual technology of a healer who's trained to go into trance and lay on hands, and it's whatever you think about it. These people live a long way from Western medicine, and they get sick, and they get better using this.
Wow.
And in fact, even in Western medicine, we rely on this with the placebo effect. When drugs go to trial, there's a control group in that drug trial that only gets a placebo, and the drug has to make more people better than the placebo, which means that the placebo makes quite a lot of people better, and these people don't just think they get better and die later, they actually get better, and no one knows why.
Wow.
And we think, Western medicine, it's so rational, but it's actually 50% irrational. So when we were making these journeys that the book, The Long Ride Home, talks about, through Mongolia, then we were in Africa, then we were in Australia in the rainforest there with Aboriginal shamans, and then we were finally on the Navajo reservation right here in the USA. What these healers are doing really is they're just sort of activating love, human empathy of the spirit. And I think whether that happens in a Christian context or whether that happens in a shamanic context, it's all the same thing. It's all the same God. It's all the same universe. It's all the same human condition. Yes, I'm a great believer in this, that you cannot. Back to what you were talking about actually earlier with the camp for sort of at-risk youth and juvenile offenders in Florida, where they were basically approaching them with love. It does work.
Rupert, we're almost out of time. I don't mean to cut you short, but I want to give the book away. Call me if you want the book. It's called The Long Ride Home. You're going to love it. The rest of us have to go buy it. Go to the website endangerous.com, and you'll see. What's the other one?
That's my son's. It's horseboyworld.com, or thelongridehomebook.com.
Okay. And by the way,
Long Ride Home Book.
have you discovered Beano? Because it says here you suffer from extreme flatulence that you call a talent.
It is true. I'm gifted in this regard. And had we longer, I could wire up a microphone and we could.
That would be a great moment. All right, we've got to go. Thank you so much. That was wonderful, Rupert. Good luck, and I love the love that I feel from you. I love that love.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. I got somebody calling in for the book too. We'll take a break and be right back.
As a bayou threatens to breach the levee.
Louisiana National Guard and others have already rescued people using boats and big military trucks. In Baton Rouge, they're stacking sandbags to prepare for the worst-case scenario, but hoping for the best.
Better to be safe than sorry. If there is a lot of rain, we don't want to get flooded out. We don't want to risk it.
Up to 7 inches of rain is expected, and that could be a foot by the end of the weekend.
Fox Radio's Tanya Day Powers. A search resumes for 3 small children missing since last night in rural South Carolina. They were said to be playing outside in their yard. And the number of Americans applying for first-time jobless help last week dropping to the lowest level since October to 259,000. Fox News. We report. You decide.
Hey, it's Flo, and this is my impression of a less than ideal job candidate. Is the owner here? Oh, you're the owner! Whatever. So I can only work Monday through Wednesday, sometimes. And I gotta get out at 2 p.m. sharp. Band practice, you know? We're big on covers. Like how Progressive covers both businesses and commercial auto. Anyway, sorry I'm late, but being late's sort of my thing.
All the coverage your business needs at progressivecommercial.com.
Resume? Nah, I don't really do those. I just like to come in and let my personality shine.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Without automatic cloud backup, everything on your computer is at risk. From hackers, viruses, natural disasters, or even the occasional human error. Few things are as bad for business as downtime. So why take the risk? Get Carbonite Cloud Backup and protect all the files that keep your business or your home running smoothly.